Everyone, welcome to today's video where we are going to be discussing the case of Bill Cassidy. I guess it's not a case. I've been covering a lot of cases yet. It's Senator Bill Cassidy, and he's gotten himself into a little bit of a pickle because he had an interview with someone from Politico talking about reproductive health. They were talking about the Roe versus Wade thing and Louisiana's view on reproductive health. Should you be able to have an abortion? All of those things. And he said something that became a little bit controversial. And today we're going to break it down and talk about it. So let's dive right into it after this intro that I made. So you have to watch. All right, perfect. That was pretty painless, wasn't it? So let us dive right in. And I've put a poll in the chat to see where most of you get your news because I'm going to come right out and say this. I saw this yesterday on my Instagram. Let's pull it up. And I had an internal freak out. Okay. I saw it and it said Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, our maternal death rates are only bad if you count Black women. If you correct our population for race, we're not much of an outlier as it would otherwise appear. And I saw this in, a little as I was swiping through Instagram and I was like, hold on one hot moment. I am enraged. I pretty much took it at face value. I saw probably like 20 people post this very quickly as I was going through, and I was enraged. I told my husband Joe about it. I was like, this is horrifying. You cannot come out here and say, let's just not count Black people. That is like the most racist awful thing in a culture, right, of especially in healthcare where things are already racist and awful, only to be worsened by the fact that I then realized that Senator Bill Cassidy was a gastroenterologist. So he is a doctor. I was like, we don't have that many healthcare people, and now they're in the Senate and they're talking this nonsense. And honestly, I ranted to Joe about it. My husband, I was like, this is ridiculous. We already have such a problem. And then I went to bed and I told my sister, who helps me, research, do all of my things. I said, look at this case. I really want to go on the internet and rant about it. And we need to discuss it. Okay. And so she did. And it turned out it's been an interesting discovery and one that I wanted to talk about because I think other people we'll get into it. So if you've seen this, let me know. 55% of people so far are saying yes, you get all of your information, like your news from social media. I get pretty much all of my news from social media as well. I it's just a mess. I don't, where to go. But I'm slowly discovering that can be a little bit misleading. So I am, if you are unfamiliar, if you've never watched my channel or anything before, I am someone I lean quite liberal. So when this came out, I'm looking through it and I'm like, oh, okay, this fits with the narrative that I kind of construct in my head, right? That this senator, he's doing this thing. Of course, he's going to say that, this is horrible and, why shouldn't we count Black people? I bought very heavily into that. Now, I want to show you some other articles that ended up coming out on it. I and we can kind of look at it because I was all over Instagram and then I Googled it. And when I Googled it, this came up. Where did we go? I have to get the right one. Okay. This ended up coming up. Watch Republican senator make jaw-dropping remarks about Black women and maternal mortality rate in his state. Right. So I'm watching this and I was like, well, this is even more awful, right? Like this is just, you can't come out here and say something like, let's not count part of the population, right? That people like, I think it also plays into the fact that, there's a lot of, oh, if you're from, everyone from the South is racist. The South has its struggles. If you've watched my videos on North Carolina, the area that I lived in certainly struggled with racism. But in general, like it's all feeding into the same thing, right? We have a very bipartisan view of a lot of this. This type of thing then feeds into it. So I'm enraged at this point, right? I've Googled this. I am absolutely livid when my sister, very level-headed sister, points out to me, she said, can you just look at the whole article? She's like, we were angry together for a second. I did have a glorious, blissful moment of rage with her. And then her more, she's like, let's really look into this, And my whole point on my channel here is so that we can be a voice of reason and really dig into what is actually happening in healthcare because everything is so sensationalized and then we can't get along and agree, right? So I was rageful at this point when she tells me, "Hey, why don't you pull up and look at the article?" Which I did. So this is the actual article. This was an interview that he had done with Politico. I honestly don't know I don't read any news sources whatsoever from the news. So I don't know where Politico stands, like in terms of Republic, like, is it conservative? Is it liberal? My guess would be it might be liberal. I told you my bias just so you kind of know going into it where we stand. So she sends me the article. This is him. This is Senator Bill Cassidy. Um, he is like we said, a Republican senator from Louisiana. And he is having this interview. They were doing the interview, like we said, to discuss like Roe versus Wade, reducing, they were saying, hey, if you're taking away abortion, how is this going to impact healthcare? We're a little worried about the birth control. We're going to have a video on Roe versus Wade and all the things. It's coming. I just want to make it educational and informative and nuanced. And I needed a minute to get less angry before I did that. So that is coming. Stay tuned for that. If you're new and you want to hear more about that, subscribe on this channel. We do all things healthcare education and review and discussion, and hopefully cut out some of the BS. So looking through, and in his statement, we're looking and it says about a third of our population is African American. African Americans, we know, have a higher incidence of maternal mortality. So maternal mortality, that is people who are dying within the range of having babies, right? In the period before, during, and then right after. So and then he said, this is his statement. So if you correct our population for race, we're not as much of an outlier as it otherwise appears. This is not good language. I'm not like a huge stand for this dude. I'm just trying to relay that this information also can be viewed in a little bit of a different way. I don't like that you shouldn't say if you correct our population for race. It's not a great statement. Like, you should never say correct, because that's implying that, if we just get rid of the problematic people here, right? Not a good way. You should say control. If we control, that's what you do in studies. You don't correct, you control for different variables so that you can find the one outlier and be like, oh, literally everything else is the same here. Why do these terrible things keep happening to these people? What's the only difference? Oh, they're Black. That's the difference, which would mean we have to look into how are we treating people. Anyway, he says correct. Bad word, but that's what he says. That's what the news kind of took and ran with, right? That's what got me so enraged. That's what my neighbors heard me ranting about this. They did not include the next statement, though, which was, now, I say that not to minimize the issue, but to focus the issue as to where it would be. For whatever reason, people of color have a higher incidence of maternal mortality, which I think that statement is stupid. Like, for whatever reason, we know whatever reason it is. It's racism. Healthcare is loaded with systemic racism. We've known this for a long time, that people who are Black, anyone in the BIPOC community, essentially, you have a much higher chance of dying when you go to give birth. The rates from the CDC we'll look at later, everything's linked down below, by the way, if you want to check it out, are 3 times as high. In Louisiana, it's 4 times as high. You are 4 times more likely to die giving birth in Louisiana if you are Black than if you are white, which is atrocious. And this is actually something that I think he was trying to highlight, but he did a terrible job phrasing it. And now the internet hates him because they thought he was being ridiculous and racist. In the United States, he goes on to say, has the worst mortality rate among developed nations, which is very embarrassing and something that we desperately need to fix. So many words. New talk for a different day. I need my cup. I have a cup. Hold on. Future video cup. We'll need to get it out for this one. Each year, approximately 17 mothers die for every 100,000 pregnancies in the country, which rates much more common. And you see that's disproportionately right, people who are Black. That's according to the CDC. And like we went on to say, 4 Black mothers die for every white mother compared to 3 to 1 racial nationally. The state ranks 47 out of 48 states officially assessed. So that's not good. You don't want to rank high on this list, right? This is saying who has the highest maternal mortality rate. And they do use all the words in here of like maternal mortality rate, all of that. I think it's better now, like, just to say pregnant people. They're going to refer to everything as a woman. So just heads up, we're going into that. And it is saying, he goes on to say there's many different reasons for all of this that is happening. And the interviewer, or they talked to Veronica Galipsy Bell, who then went on to comment and said she is Louisiana's perinatal quality collaborative and pregnancy associated mortality review and obstetrician at Oceaner Health. That's a wow. That is a title. Basically, she's their expert pregnant person lady, it sounds like. And she is saying that, if you remove all the other variables and we say, hey, all these people make the exact same amount of money, all these people have we control for all the other variables. Where do you live? What hospital were you at? What kind of complications did you have in your pregnancy? And we remove all of those, we still get the only difference here being that they're Black. And then she goes on to say that race is a social construct, not a biological condition. So this is a lot of something we see in the literature. A lot of studies will be like, oh, Black people have more high blood pressure, but it's not like Black people don't come from one country. Like, I don't think people really realized, I don't know, back when we were doing these studies, like, this is a multi-country thing. This is you can't blame it on oh, your biology if you're from all over the world. So they're saying, hey, race is a social construct. So this is going to be based more on racism. Okay. Rather than, hey, your genes. To say we have a lot of Black people in Louisiana, that's why our outcomes are bad, is out of context. So this was a critical thing coming at it saying, hey, you can't just say, hey, we have more Black people, that's why we have more maternal mortality rates. And you can't say, if you correct for the Black people in the population, we're here. And so they was kind of taking what he said poorly, which he did say poorly. No one's saying he didn't, but you're kind of looking at it and you're like, is this, in the scope of things, is this really what you wanted to say? So then we can kind of look at, and in here, someone at the beginning of the chat, let me take a brief detour, had asked, I have seen this time and time again, right? In my practice, I have had patients, I have had friends who reported that, we have a huge crisis in this country, especially pretty much within all of healthcare, where it's pretty racist, but especially in maternal mortality. We're seeing these statistics that if you're Black, you're dying 3 to 4 times higher. I have seen this. I have had my patients, I have had my friends in North Carolina come and tell me and say, this is how I was treated. And it almost ended very, very horrifically. People are not listened to. That's the primary thing that I've heard from patients and friends, that this is people don't feel listened to. They don't feel like they're heard, and they don't feel like things will happen. So let me go back because I did see this comment and I looked it up really quick. Brianna Marie, is this about that mother in the news who died after a routine C-section? So I went and let's take this one out. Stop sharing that. Thanks for bearing with me with my not so technical skills. I looked this up really quick on the fly right before this, and it was something that was actually being covered currently. Family of a Black woman who died after a sloppy C-section sues the hospital for racism. This is a court case that's going to be going on in the next couple of weeks. There was a woman, Kira Dixon Johnson, had a C-section that they said went really, really fast. They cut her bladder during the C-section, and she bled to death internally. She kept complaining and complaining and complaining. But they didn't listen to her. And so maybe I'll end up covering this or something, but essentially another example of, hey, if you're not listening to people, horrible things are going to happen. They were not able to save her and she passed away. So that is who we have. We'll cover that maybe in a different video. Let me know in the comments give me a 1. That sounds so YouTuber. Put a 1 in the chat if that's something that you want to talk about. So I appreciate you, Brianna, for letting me know about that. And now let's go back and kind of look. So we have, who the heck is this dude, right? So because after I got really angry, then I was like, okay, we should probably look into him and see if he's the ultimate villain that in my mind, I think he is. So Senator, where's his name? I was going to call him something else because I got distracted. Bill Cassidy. I was about to call him Bill Casey. Graduated. He went to LSU for medical school. And he's been a like a teacher at a medical school. So the more I was looking into him, I'm like, it doesn't seem like this is something that this person should be doing, because he's really advocated throughout his career for a lot of healthcare reform in like shocking, in ways that surprised me. Not all the ways I would love for him to do it. I would, love to see him doing a few other things, but it looks like he's mostly he's trying to create a private and public partnership to vaccinate a bunch of the people in Baton Rouge, with the school age children with Hep B. He has done a bunch of like converting abandoned Kmarts into emergency healthcare facilities, after like Hurricane Katrina. He's like tried to put a little emphasis on healthcare, which I was like, okay, like we can kind of get that, and I'm here for it. So what he was actually trying to say, I think he didn't say it like overly well, but if you really look at it, I do think when you watch the entire video, which I'm not going to play here because the YouTube hates it when you play different videos, like, or news sites will claim you for like copyright for like absolutely nothing, but I'm going to leave it down below, and if you want to watch it, you can go watch it and see what his whole entire statement was, because essentially I don't think he's like that bad guy. I think he said something that was very stupid, but he wants to focus on, his whole point of saying that was to say, hey, this is the problem, is the fact that if we control for this, we see that it is a huge racial problem. So we need to actually target that more. And he has two different things that he is doing in order to try to actually fix it. Because from the way I've seen it, at least, and if you guys have seen other things, if you're from there, if you know other things, by all means tell me. But from the way I've looked at it, is he is trying to focus on it as a problem, and he just had a really, really, really crappy way of describing that. So we have two different initiatives that he is supporting in Congress that kind of like back up, like, okay, this is actually something that we can like look at. And some of them seem decent, right? For if you are trying to find this type of reform, right? If like this is stuff that I think we should be encouraging, which is why I'm doing this live, because I don't want people like him, who I disagree with pretty profoundly politically, to be thrown under the bus and dragged all through social media because he said this state thing that was taken out of context when he's actually doing some stuff that looks pretty cool. So one of the first initiatives I wanted to show was they call it the Connected Mom Act. And so this is going through, and it is basically saying one of the reasons that he has and others have identified as a huge problem in the maternal mortality risk is people typically like, you have what if you have less access to transportation, trying to troubleshoot essentially like, hey, why aren't you able to get the proper prenatal care or the standard prenatal care? And what can we actually affect? And one of the things was, people said, I can't get to the office, I don't have a way to monitor my blood pressure. Monitoring your blood pressure is really important for things like preeclampsia, which you see a disproportionate amount in people who are Black, and it's leading to a lot of death in Louisiana. So they said, what's something, and the treatment for preeclampsia is birth, in case you weren't aware. That is, you monitor your blood pressure, and then when it gets to the point where you're like, this is just bad, you have the baby. And it usually fixes everything, unless there's all sorts of like HELP syndrome things that go bad. But one of the reasons why it gets so bad and nothing, like it gets to the point where it can be deadly, is because people don't have a way to get to the office to do all the checks, to check your blood pressure. So they're trying to target this here, where it will fund Medicaid, and try to give pulse oximeters, blood pressure cuffs, scales, blood glucose monitors in case you have gestational diabetes or diabetes going into pregnancy, with the goal of improving maternal and child health outcomes for pregnant and postpartum women enrolled in state Medicaid programs. So that's trying to target people who are the most at risk, right? Because they're in a Medicaid program. This is not all inclusive. I'm not trying to say like this is the fix all for everything, but I do want to highlight really quick that I think this is good. I think it's someone who is realizing, hey, we have a huge problem here. Let's meet people where they like, let's try to do something. And so I just want to give him kudos for like, hey, this is happening. And I would rather our social media power go to highlighting and saying, hey, you're actually doing okay things. And maybe you can have a lesson with someone who, like a speaking person, a coach, and be like, hey, words that should not come out of your mouth in the same sentence are like, if you ignore Black people or control, like correcting Black, let's just ignore those words in the same sentence. Let's highlight these other things that you're doing. So this is one of the things that I liked and I wanted to highlight. Another thing was he's also on an initiative to do, and this is a much more kind of broad reaching type of something, is where is our other one? Is it that one? No. Is it this one? Maybe. Okay, the Maternal Health Quality Improvement Act. And this is basically looking at, this is a wide study that they're trying to implement, where they're going to try to identify developing or disseminating best practices to improve maternal care quality outcomes, improve maternal and infant health, and eliminate preventable maternal mortality and severe maternal morbidity, which all basically just says we want people to survive birth more than they currently are in Louisiana. And one of the things they're looking specifically at is racism. They're trying to implement different, establish a program to award grants to accredited schools of medicine. So that's like DO schools, osteopathic medicine, nursing, and other health training programs for the training of healthcare professionals to improve the prenatal care, labor care, birthing, postpartum care for racial and ethnic minority populations. So hopefully saying, hey, this is a problem. The more we talk about racism being a problem and people who are not white not being listened to, the more hopefully we will eventually maybe start to see progress where it's like, oh, yes, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to catch these things early. I'm going to meet you where you're at and give you the resources to succeed here and try to bridge that gap, because it's unacceptable that Black people are dying at 3 to 4 times the rate of white people when they give birth. That is not okay. And this is trying to go into that. Down here, it's talking about, more they're going to focus on racial and ethnic minority populations, and then they have to report back. So if they're going to be getting the grant to kind of go in and implement these things and get these resources to better serve these populations, they also have to report back and say, hey, these were our outcomes. This is where we struggled. This is where we found like another pitfall. And then it gives a timeline down here to say, hey, we're really looking kind of to like, we're going to come out with a final statement kind of saying, this is how this all tied together. This is what we saw. And hopefully put a little bow on it with a, tie everything together. So overall, that is the basis of it. And now I'm going to kind of go through and we can like chat in the comments, but that I just wanted to kind of get out in front of it and say, I too fell for this. I too was super duper ragey as soon as I clicked by and I saw, these headlines that were like, hey, this dude said this and this is unacceptable. But I just want us to like take a minute and like critically think, hopefully spread the word with someone who doesn't know about it, and just take the moment to like dive in. That's something I need to do a lot more, is like without being reactionary, really look into it and see, so that we can support people, even if we don't necessarily, we might not like line up on every single thing, right? Like if you told me I was going to be make a video supporting a Louisiana Republican senator in the weeks after the whole Roe v. Wade thing is exploding, I would have like laughed at you. But I think this is how hopefully we bridge gaps. We try to be fair to both sides. We listen to other arguments. We make informed decisions, and we go from there. This is how we can hopefully fix the whole like you versus me, is by not taking people out of context. I think in his way, he really is, this senator, trying to do the best he can. Like he's trying. He is making an effort, and we should say good job, so that we can, keep going and we're not stuck with this. I hate you, you hate me. Everything is just a hot mess. Brianna said she thinks it's because social media is, it thinks it's because social media is free. I think this is about like, do you get, where do you get your news from? social media is free. Mother Baby Nurse Joe says, as a women's health nurse in Louisiana and being a Black woman in Louisiana, unintentional racism is much more common than blatant racism. Pain will be ignored for people of color, people looking down on Medicaid. Exactly. And thank you so much for bringing this up. This is something that I think it's very nuanced. Like I said, there is definitely overt racism. There's definitely that. But a lot of it is that, like just that, not listening to people, not taking people's concerns seriously, not thinking, when someone's complaining of something time after time again, going into that, it is in like something that you have to be so incredibly aware of. And every single really like living in different states, especially going to it's just really, it's something that I've had to massively work on. I think it's something that we all have to look at, is what, as healthcare people and just as humans in general, what are my internal biases towards these? And you almost have to look at it without judgment, because your natural reaction, right, is going to be like, oh my gosh, of course I'm not racist. Like, but you really have to look at it and be like, am I really treating patients exactly the same? Or am I going in with any type of preconceived notion here regarding race, regarding gender, regarding weight, any of these things? Like, you hold them in the back of your head, even if you don't realize it. And the more we think about it and talk about it, the more we can hopefully fix it. Because this is something that is horrifying and we need to fix, because we're winning the competition in general for like worst place in the developed world to have a baby. And then in like, obviously it just gets so much worse depending on where you live. And that's horrible. Valerie said, implicit bias for medical professionals can play a big role in medical outcomes and continuing disparities. Absolutely. I have a whole video actually on racism in healthcare and kind of like why a lot of people don't trust the healthcare system who are not white, and then like what kind of goes into it, what I've seen play into it, and what, mostly using data of like, this is probably why like we're here. And here's some concrete examples of racism in healthcare for the people who are constantly in my comment section saying, stop talking about racism. Racism doesn't exist in healthcare. I'm a nurse and I'm not racist. And it's just, it exists. Racism in healthcare is a huge, huge, huge problem. Calling it out when we see it, and discussing it and not being afraid to have the conversations is hopefully how we're going to fix it. Nurse Scott, hello. Right, and vice versa. I'm talking about when there's a report that the proximate cause for, I think he was talking to someone else here. Baba T said, Nurse Liz, new grad NP here. I have 3 job offers, hospice, geriatrics, and cardiology. That's exciting. Congratulations. Marilyn said, as a Louisiana citizen reading this, my jaw hit the floor, and he's an MD, appalling. And this is exactly this is exactly how I felt, Marilyn. I was like, I was so deeply enraged. And then if you take a minute to look into it, this is actually something that hopefully now you're on board with me too, Marilyn, that this is okay. Like, he phrased it horribly. Definitely needs help in that department. But, here we are. We can get places. We can hopefully see through things, work together. Mama Nurse, hi. Who said Kate, hello, how are you? Everybody else that said hello. Nurse Scott, can you play the video clip? No, because I don't want to get copyright struck. I don't even know the correct terminology for that, but I don't want that. That doesn't sound like a good time for me. I tried to download it so I could like chop it up into clips, but I will. It's already linked down below. At least it should be, so that you can go and check it out and see what's going on. Valerie said, socioeconomic and access to proper medical treatment and healthcare from income disparities and of course racial bias come from physicians all factor into these disparities. Yeah. And like it's from like all levels. It's not just physicians. It's a lot of people that interact with the healthcare system come with a lot of internal biases that a lot of us don't even realize. And it affects care. So just listen to people, right? Just listen to people when they are talking to you, and just listen and internalize it and let it sit for a minute. Brianna Marie LPN says this exists. Yes, I'm assuming you're talking about the racism. It absolutely does. Marilyn says, I need to look into this. The headline for your video was my first exposure to this news. Yes. And I purposefully, I wasn't trying to make it like clickbaity. I just wanted to make people see that, hey, this is what all the articles are saying. And like, I was so like, when I tell you I was angry, I was like, I was on a rant. Joe just like, my husband just like brought me a White Claw, which my neighbors have gotten me. I don't want to say addicted to, but I had never had one until like 2 weeks ago, maybe. And then all my neighbors drink them. And I've completed my basicness essentially by falling into that lifestyle. I was like, yes, this is delicious. So far, my favorite flavor is passion fruit. If you have a different flavor that I should try out, I've tried watermelon and lemon. And I think that's it. So very off topic, but if there's a different flavor that I should probably try, do let me know. Because he just showed up and handed me one. He said, you need one of these. This is stressful. Bree says, Black woman here that just gave birth and had to go back for my newborn baby who had to be delivered at 38 weeks for intrauterine growth restriction, was sent home the next day for jaundice at 4 days old. His levels are 17. Oh, I hope your baby is, I hope you're both okay. I hope you're doing well. And congratulations on your baby. But that is so hard to not be able to have to go right back in after you have your baby. Having your baby is so disorienting because you're getting out, you're just like days and nights blend together, and then you have to all of a sudden go back to the hospital, and that just sounds miserable. And then you go back and you put them under the lights. I had a lot of patients when I worked bedside, and those were the babies that you always like they looked like they were tanning in a little tanning bed. They put their little light on and they watch them. But I very, very much hope that the baby is doing okay, that you are getting a little bit of sleep and rest and people are taking care of you. And that his levels just go, plop right back to normal after he gets his little suntan, and you get to go home and give all the baby snuggles. Thanks for being here and listening. There's Scott says mango. We should try out mango White Claw. I feel a little bit bad because the dichotomy of these conversations, one is very serious and one is very not, but hey, that happens. Live stream. So yeah, that is kind of my thoughts on that. I just wanted to hop on and hopefully get this out there into the internet. I'm going to make a TikTok on it and a reel and try to kind of counterbalance. I was actually surprised. Here, let's pull it up really quick because I thought by today, wrong button. I thought that by today things might have like calmed down a little bit and other people might have said, hey, let me see, share a screen. This is like, let's debunk this. Cause I'm usually pretty behind the times and I would like, people had not come to this. So we have a lot of people commenting, from the title. So remember, this is the title. So this is me yesterday taking this very, very much at face value. They don't even hide racism anymore. I mean, many people don't. I have whole videos on that. Oh my gosh, anyone that votes for this man after that statement should be ashamed of themselves. And this is the thing that I want to fight, is because he is actually doing other great things. And I would like to see him doing other good things like we had discussed earlier. This is my senator. I bike past his house daily and sometimes even encounter him. It's wild to me that the glaring blind spots he has, given that especially most of his career was working in public hospitals in the predominantly Black city. I shouldn't be amazed anymore when he says stuff like this. But if anyone would know, it's better, it's him. So like this, I think he does know. I think he really does have a passion for trying to improve those outcomes that he has seen from working in those situations. So we made this video. And again, correct our population for race. That was a horrible choice of words. Absolutely horrible choice of words. And we should not be saying things like that. That was not ideal. Bree says she's the one with the baby. Everyone congratulate Bree. Better now, but my doc said we should not have been discharged as soon as we were. I am, that is very frustrating. It would be easier to stay. We had to have an extended hospital stay with my daughter. It's easier to stay than go home and then have to come back. That's very disruptive to the healing process after birth. I would be willing to bet part of this has to do with the fact that we as healthcare providers are not trained to see many skin conditions on skin that is not white. If you look through textbooks, if you're looking online and you look up jaundice, I am almost positive that most of the pictures are going to be on little white babies. And it's much easier to see. We're trained to see the jaundice. So jaundice, if you don't know, you kind of look a little yellow. It'll happen on your skin and you can see it in the eyes, but especially on babies, you're going to see it on their skin and they just look a little bit more tan usually than you would expect. We're not trained to see skin conditions like eczema, jaundice, different types of rashes on more melanated skin. And that's problematic because most of the world has more melanated skin, but that's not the model we learn on. There are some great Instagram accounts, and if I can find them, I will leave them linked down below, of people who are putting together resources for like dermatology on people who are not white, essentially, because that's what all of our models are in all of our textbooks. And that's been really helpful for me when I was working in primary care. That was a godsend because it was so, that was like something that you realize partway through. You're like, I don't know what poison oak rash looks like on skin that doesn't look like mine. That's a problem. And I would be willing to bet that Bree's baby probably got discharged. Part of the reason, like, because you might not notice it as much as, if you've seen a lot of babies, you look at one, you're like, that one's a lot tanner than it should be. You're probably going to make sure and really check its bilirubin, monitor a little bit more. But I very much, very, very much hope that you get to go home soon and that this hasn't totally, totally botched your birth experience, which hopefully was otherwise okay. All right, friends. Thank you so much for hanging out today. If you do have other things that you would like to see me talk about, topics like this, feel free to tag me on Instagram or on TikTok, or send me an email, and we can talk about it, because I really want to discuss more things in this, like just like break down things that are very, very hot topics in a way that it's like, hey, like maybe things aren't, like, some things are definitely sensational, but maybe not all things are sensational. And if they're sensational, I'm here for it and we need to discuss it. More on that coming soon. I have some I have some feelings videos that are going to be coming up here once I figure out a way to say it in a way that is nicer. J. Michael said, Liz, thank you for using the term more melanated skin. I feel it's a great step towards removing bias. And it's very true. I think it really puts it more in context of just more melanated is just that your skin is a little bit browner, a little darker, and it removes some of the other context I found when I've sort of phrased it that way. I found that on Instagram, not shockingly. Medicine should be broad. Sickness has no color. Agreed. Freddie Bryce says, I'm studying medicine and your doctor is correct. You shouldn't have been. Women after giving birth need longer care than just a few days in the hospital. That is a whole different topic, Freddie. That is a postpartum care in the United States is that's a topic for a different day. Horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. It's probably why we have so much postpartum depression, so many postpartum complications, and a lot of that mortality starts to come in. Is because we just kind of forget about the person who had the baby immediately after they have the baby. They're like, hey, yeah, come back in 6 weeks. Best of luck. Good luck. Childcare costs more than your mortgage. If you don't breastfeed, you're abusing your baby, and good luck. Also, you need to like cook and clean and look perfect and bounce back. You should really bounce back and get your body back. And if you're working, you're abandoning your child. If you're not working, what are you doing with your life? You're not setting a very good example for that baby. And everything's based on productivity, but you all should snuggle your baby because time goes too fast. Did you tell I have feelings about this? All right, friends. Thank you so much for being here today. As always, I very much hope that you know that you are not alone. You can do hard things and you are enough. Tag me in things you want me to have a feelings about, and I will see you next time. Thanks for sharing some of your precious moments today with me. Bye, friends. Let's find the outro screen. Oh, thanks to my channel members, these lovely humans who helped me be here. I appreciate you. If you want to join below, there's some random perks and my eternal gratitude. All right, bye for real now.